Assuming you have all your intellectual faculties, right? It would be impossible for someone who's really committed to becoming wealthy and was willing to do the work, to learn the skills. It's almost impossible not to succeed. How big is a question. How long it takes, another question.
For those people watching that are entrepreneurs, want to learn sales, what did you do in that first day that you basically became a top salesman? Like, we're going to talk more about your whole sales straight line formula, but first day you didn't have time to implement a whole script. What do you do that most people don't do? Is it your tonality? That's one of the things, body language, tonality, taking people through features, not just features, but benefits. Like, what do you think you did that first day?
Well, in fact, one of the interesting things you said, you didn't have time to put together a script. In fact, I did.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah.
On day one?
I took 3 hours to write one. See, I would never, this is something interesting thing happened many years later, this is relevant, is that when I was tested by some psychologists about my ability to close, they put me through a whole battery of these weird tests, and one of them was a mock sale where I had to close someone in an investment type of situation. It was being filmed.
Was it like, sell me this pen kind of thing?
It was, they handed me some information on the dairy industry, and I had to then convince someone to open up an account at a firm to manage the money for the dairy industry, right?
Okay.
So they handed me about 10, 12 pages of information, right? And they said, take as much time as you want and, to study this, and let's see you close this guy, right? So I start reading it, I'm reading, right? I start writing down my thoughts. About 30 minutes later, they knock on the door. I'm like, yeah. I said, do you need more time? I said, yeah, just give me another 30 minutes. I said, okay, no problem. 30 minutes goes by. They come back. I said, just give me another 20 minutes. They said, no problem. Take 20 more minutes. I said, give me 15 more minutes, right? Anyway, after about 2 hours, I said, I'm ready. And I had wrote myself a really, really, not an exact script, but pretty close to a really killer script with sort of, how I would actually engineer the sale from start to finish.
You were selling penny stocks.
This I'm talking now is recent, many years later.
Recent, okay.
But I want to tell you this because it's relevant. Now, this is like, I think 2010 that this happened, right? With psychologists being filmed.
Oh, okay, this is the later test.
And they called in some guy who was an actor, and he was supposed to be the CEO of a dairy company, and I was supposed to close him. So we go through this whole thing, and I introduce myself, and we go through this back and forth, and they're filming the whole thing. And after about 15 minutes, the guy he's like, okay, fine, I'll open up an account. And he starts laughing his ass off. So I'm like, what's so funny? Psychologists come in, they say, we told him under no circumstances should he say yes.
Yep.
Yet within 15 minutes, he said yes. I don't get it. I said, well, when I got the guy into a situation, did it make sense to say no? He said, well, here's the weird thing. We've tested 100 other people in sales, and no one ever spent more than 5 minutes reading the material.
Huh.
You spent 2 hours.
So preparation, it's some simple fundamentals.
Part of the straight line is about strategic preparation, meaning that listen, my overriding concept is every sale's the same, right?
Yes.
And that would seem to be counterintuitive.
Yes.
Because everyone has different needs, different belief systems, right? Different outcomes, But the truth is that every sale is the same.
Yes.
And I'll explain that a bit later on in the interview. But it starts with your ability to essentially make an airtight case to someone on both a logical and an emotional level, right?
Yeah.
About, essentially why you're right to want them to do whatever you want them to do. Why does it make sense, right?
Yes.
And it's got to be an airtight case, and then you have to be able to also accomplish other things as well. So there's 2 ways to go about that. One is to wing it, which you might be able to do if you're really, really great, or you can write it down, plan it out. I mean, the second one is where you really start to bring your averages up tremendously. So I'm a big believer in strategic preparation.
Yeah. Confident fit in. You talk about being sharp and enthusiastic and perceived as an expert. Is confidence kind of part of, would you consider that part of the enthusiasm and the sharp?
No. Confidence is entirely different thing. So confidence there's 2 phases of confidence, right? It starts off with acting as if. No one starts off confident. I don't care who you are, okay? The first day, when you trust me, you're not going to be confident. You're not going to be an expert really, right? But you need to act as if. I would tell my guys, my kids back then, act as if you're a wealthy man, rich already.
Yeah.
And you'll become rich.
Yep.
Act as if you have the answers, and the answers will come to you. Act as if you have confidence, and people will have confidence in you. I said, act as if. Now,
do you think people can become delusional that way?
Here's the point. Now, that can and you see it as delusion
Right.
when someone doesn't do the work to become the expert.
Right.
So there has to be coupled with the fact that I'm actually working and I'm on the hyper fast track to become an expert, to learn special skills, and then you're actually walking your talk.
Yeah.
And then it works. So you have to act as if until it becomes the truth, and then you're just acting as things really are. But you have to always act that way.
So you think, so basically, some people don't do the first part, which is get that initial catalyst, that initial boost to say, you know what, I'm not rich yet, but I'm gonna dress like I'm rich, I'm gonna talk like I'm rich, I'm gonna get up and work like I'm rich.
Here's an honest question, right? You're an online, personality, right? You have a huge business, huge following. Let me ask you this. Truthfully, let's say that I stripped every dollar you had and changed your face, no one knew your name, and you were to start right now. Could you build it all back up again?
I think so.
Of course you could. You know why you could? Because you're still you. You have the skill sets, the talent, okay? So when you take away everything from somebody, they're still that same person.
Yes.
Now, that's why when a rich person takes a tumble, they'll typically come back, right?
Yeah.
Unless they hit the lottery, right?
Yeah.
Or they were a member of the Lucky Sperm Club, right? Maybe they just inherited it from their parents, right? But for the people that work their way up and made their money, they'll earn it back. When you have special skills, right? That is what, and you have the vision for the future, you want to take action, right? That's what it takes. It's about special skills. People don't realize how much of success is not an accident. It's about people that have these extraordinary skills and they take action.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer in learning skills. Like you read my first book, right?
Yes.
Well, when I first tried to write, I was a terrible writer. I taught myself to write by...
Wolf of Wall Street was your first book?
Yes. I never wrote before. When I first tried to write, I was a terrible writer.
How many copies have sold?
Millions of copies, right?
Wow.
So how did I write Wolf of Wall Street myself without a ghostwriter? I picked up a book called Bonfire of the Vanities and started reading it. Tom Wolfe, I'm sure you've read it, right?
Yeah.
And as soon as I started reading it, I'm like, oh my God, this guy's the best writer in the world. I want to write like that. And I used his book like a textbook. I took out my highlighter and I broke down his strategy for writing and I practiced before I wrote the book. I said, let me first teach myself the skill to write like Tom Wolfe. And that's what I did. I spent about 6 or 7 months with 18 hours a day studying.
Really?
Oh, yes, to the point where I could recite the whole book verbatim. Okay, seriously. So the point is that I learned how to introduce characters.
It's almost like it was a mentor. The book was your mentor.
And my model.
Yeah.
And then I wrapped it up with Hunter S. Thompson because I figured it made sense because of the drug use, right? So but I used those. And then when I was reviewing the New York Times, they said the book sounds like Hunter S. Thompson and Tom Wolfe. So it was amazing, right? That I accomplished my mission and turned myself into a writer. But here's my point.
So you basically reverse engineer. You see, I interviewed Kobe Bryant, did a little interview, and he said you got to go to where great people who have created greatness before and reverse engineer it.
Look at it this way. Look at it. I couldn't have done it without that skill.
Yeah.
If you want to go out there and succeed in the online world, you need to have certain knowledge and skills. One of them is going to be the power of persuasion and influence. It's a uniform skill in everything that you do. Whether you're a Bill Gates who convinced IBM to give you the rights to supply before you even owned it and convince someone else to sell it, right?
Yes.
Whether you're a Steve Jobs, goes without saying, right? It's this ability could be just to sell your vision for the future.
Yeah.
To sell people, employees to come work for you, to sell venture capitalists on giving you money, to sell your friend's dad, a regular entrepreneur, to get someone to invest in you. That's persuasion.
Yeah.
It's a linchpin skill to success, and that's why Warren Buffett said, if you want to succeed, you better learn how to persuade and communicate.
80% of billionaires is a good book. Just did research on billionaires, and it basically said 80% of billionaires, before they got to their final company, they were learning sales first. They were Ray Kroc started McDonald's. He was a traveling milkshake salesman.
Great movie. You see the movie?
Yeah, the new one. That's a
great movie.
Michael Keaton. How high do you think this thing could go? 20x, 30x, 5x?
Now remember this. How you define success is very different for every person. Mother Teresa was probably one of the most successful people in the world and had no money. So let's talk about success in terms of money. This is a business segment, right? We're in business. So in that sense, assuming you have all your intellectual faculties, right? It would be impossible for someone who's really committed to becoming wealthy and was willing to do the work, to learn the skills. It's almost impossible not to succeed. How big is a question? How long it takes, another question.